What's up, everyone? Morty Croson here, and today we're doing a throw mechanics breakdown on Jaxson Dart, the quarterback for the New York Giants. I probably should have done this earlier just because he got drafted as the second quarterback in the NFL draft, but just took a little bit of time to be able to do this, and I wish I would have done it sooner because I think there's a ton of great information that we can get out of his throw and be able to really utilize it within our own throwing ability to make it so we can just get that much better, that much more powerful. And that's one of the things that they talked about when watching this is from the combine. Is what stood out about Jaxson Dart is he had just a really, really strong arm. Him and Quinn Ewers, they said, were the two guys that really had an arm that stood out within all the other quarterbacks, and that's probably why he ended up going second overall, or was the second quarterback taken in the draft. And what stands out here is this back view, and I made a short about this recently if you haven't watched it, and the whole concept here is essentially really pushing off of the back leg and timing that up with the rotation out of the wrist, I think, are the two most important things when it comes to adding more velocity onto your throw. Again, the power that you're able to get off of that back leg, notice how much he's pushing off of that back foot. And what he does a really good job of is as he's pushing, he's actually pushing with a lot of his weight on that back leg and gets his body to really lean a good amount to the left. I know we talk about for some athletes that leaning might not be a good thing, and that's just because it ends up being very waist dominant or bending at like the spine. But if you're really pushing off of that back leg, notice how he has a good amount of his weight forward here, drives off that back foot, and that makes it so then he gets a ton of momentum out of the lower body. And with that, it also makes it so then as he's coming around with the wrist, he gets a big snap out of the wrist as he's coming all the way through the throw. And I think it's a good way to be able to see how to just generate a little bit more power out of the throw, is really being able to understand how to push off of that back foot and also how to be able to be fast with that wrist. Because when you watch him here, what stands out to me is he's at this position, has the nose facing straight back, and then very quickly is able to get that movement there and the wrist. And that is obviously a lot of power that has to be distributed as he's doing that. So it's here, kind of turning that wrist, making sure that nose of football's up. And then as he's driving off of that back leg, he's rotating that wrist all the way around to then deliver the throw. And I think it's important, again, to see that, to be able to then see how you can get a little bit more action out of the wrist yourself. I was looking at some of these throws with the amount of time it took him to get the ball out of his hand. We could use this one as an example. So I think all of them were about 0.3, 0.33. And that's another critical thing. Okay, so you look at yourself throwing, you're seeing how well you're pushing off the ground, you're seeing how much weight you're maintaining on that back foot, so you're staying kind of forward, you're bending in that back knee, but you're still staying kind of forward. And then as you're driving off of that back foot, we should be seeing the wrist get around quickly. You should be getting a lot of rotation within that lower half, but then the ball should be getting out of your hand in 0.3 to 0.33 seconds. Because I think it's one thing to be able to see the power being generated. It's another thing to be able to get that power generated in this quick amount of time, because that really shows that you have a very snappy wrist action that is happening. And this doesn't take any super advanced technology to be able to do this, to be able to measure yourself, but it does take time, I think, to be able to really get yourself to understand how to generate force off that back leg effectively. I do think he has a pretty long stride here. Like the length of his base is pretty long. I know some quarterback coaches maybe aren't a big fan of that, but I don't think that that's a big deal. When we look at this, there's one view that's really good. It's at like 60 here. Let me get to it here. So I really like this view as well. Again, we can see how he's kind of pushing that hand back, right? So notice how he pushes the ball. Again, look at that base. Really strong base, gets that front foot down, right? And what I mean by that is he's not landing with the toe. He's not landing with the heel. He's landing with that base nice and firm, so then he can drive off of that back foot. If we're not down with that front foot, then we can't drive off of this back foot. You got to get this foot down like it needs to be sturdy. It needs to be like it's going to be holding 500 pounds of force, because when you generate and you push off that back leg, it's got to be able to absorb that to be able to be effective with the throw. Nice and calm though in that front shoulder. So he's generating a ton of power. We can see how much rotation he's getting out of that back leg, how much action he's getting out of the lower half, but he's controlled in the upper body, which makes it so then he can be accurate with the delivery. He's not going to miss high. He's not going to miss low. He's going to be able to throw that ball accurately because he's maintaining his front shoulder position and his spine position during the release. But you got to be whippy with the wrist. So he's creating a lot of power here. He's getting a lot of power there, but he's creating a lot of control, a lot of stability here. And that's what you got to do, right? We're looking at Jaxson Dart, but that's what Cam Ward does. That's what Patrick Mahomes does. That's what Josh Allen does. That's what all these top quarterbacks do. And while I started off the video saying, you know, I should have probably done this earlier, I almost think it worked out best that I didn't, because right when I'm kind of putting some things together when it comes to that push off of the back leg, the rotation within the wrist, and how those two align, we look at Jaxson Dart, who's such a perfect example of somebody that's executing that at a very, very high level, so you guys can see it in action. I mean, I could try to do it, but for some reason, when I try to do it, it doesn't seem to be as noticeable, or people don't like to view it as much because I'm just a regular guy doing it in my backyard. But when I show Jaxson Dart doing it, now it's an NFL quarterback. Now it's somebody that has the success, was just taken first overall, or sorry, was taken the first round, and not first overall in the draft, but in the first round. And I think he's going to be very successful. You know, at first when I saw him play, I think he makes some questionable decisions, but watching him on John Gruden, watching him during the combine, kind of watching his whole training camp and kind of following it, I think he's going to be a legitimate quarterback. I think the Giants are going to be really good. He has some really good weapons around him. And so for him to be able to be put in a position where, you know, he's going to have plenty of opportunities to succeed, and I think he's going to do that. I think he has that swagger, definitely has the arm strength to be able to play at a high level. So we'll see how it all unfolds. But to me, very, very underrated quality pick for the Giants, getting Jaxson Dart, who's going to be a stud. And I hope you guys liked the video. If you want to get a little bit more information about some of the breakdowns or some of the things that we could do to help you in improving your own mechanics, you can check out the links down below in order to get started there.